Hey guys, welcome back. Back in April, I did a video on the main things, the main PM items and maintenance items I do every winter or right after winter to get the RV ready for the next traveling season. And one of the things I covered was to clean all of my electrical connections under the chassis, inside the coach, everything. And I also mentioned to do the main RV breaker box in the RV and the transfer switch. Today, I'm going to cover in detail on those two things, the main breaker box in the RV and the transfer switch. Details coming up on RV Street. Okay, let's get right to it. You've heard me say a million times that most of you, almost every single person watching this video right now, can do 80 to 90% of all your maintenance items and PM items on your RV. And I show you how to do it. All you have to do is click, watch, learn, and then do it. That's what my channel is all about. You know, over time, after listening to you guys, I know a lot of you are afraid of working on electrical stuff. You're unsure, you don't have the confidence, it scares you, and I totally get that, especially if you haven't worked on any electrical stuff for a long time or very little in your whole life. Well, today is going to be a great lesson on two really important things that should be done every year on your RV. Again, the main breaker box in the RV and the transfer switch. These are two critical, important pieces of equipment. Now, I usually do this every winter or right after winter, you know, March, April, somewhere around there. But I make sure I do it before we get on the road. This year, I dropped the ball a little bit. I'm a little bit behind, and it's actually 100 degrees today. So we're out here in the morning to try to do this when it's all cool, and I have to turn the ACs off so that doesn't interfere with the mic and all of that. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to unplug from shore power, and the generator is not running. Very important, those two things, before we do this work. So let's go inside the RV and let's start on the main breaker box. All right, so here we are in the RV. And the reason that I check the main breaker box in the RV is because, you know, we drag these RVs all over the country and these rough roads and stuff like that. And these connections and plumbing and all these type of things, they can and do come loose. So I make it a priority to check this breaker box, the wiring, the bars and all that, make sure that everything is good in there, and also the same thing in the transfer switch. Over the years, I have seen pictures of people's breaker box and especially their transfer switch get fried because it just was not taken care of. And to check these two things, it takes about maybe 45 minutes, maybe an hour at the most, once a year. So my breaker box is right underneath the refrigerator right here, and it's in this door. You just drop that door, and this is the main panel. This is for all the 120 stuff, all these breakers, the ACs, and anything else that runs on 120. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to remove the screws. Okay, so we've removed the panel here. And on the back side of the panel, you're going to have a label like this. You should have a label. And this tells you about all the different specs of the electrics that are in here. But there's also a little diagram or a label right here on the torque value that you should be putting on these different areas in the breaker box. If you happen to not have a label like this inside of your electrical box, I'm going to put a link below in the description text that'll take you to a link that'll give you the torque value of all standard type of breakers, whether they're 15, whether they're 20, whether they're 50, and the different wire gauges that come into those breakers. Now, it's really important to torque these screws on the breakers and the bus bars and all the screws that are in here. I know a lot of people just get in there and they take a screwdriver and they just want to make sure it's good and tight. That's not a good idea to do that, because let's just say you come in here and you think it's tight, and then you just give it a little bit more, right? Well, the next year you come back and you try it again and you give it just a little bit more. And over time, you're going to over torque these things. And that is not good. You want to make sure that these wires and these connections in here have the proper torque. Well, how do you do that? Well, you use a torque screwdriver. This is the one that I have. This is in my Amazon store. So this is a torque screwdriver, okay? And it is in inch pounds. It's not foot pounds. And it comes with 3 sets of heads here. It literally will fit anything that you're going to run into. All these connections are torqued in inch pounds using the proper head on the screwdriver. I want to show you how you set this. So these first breakers right here, this one, this one, this one, and this one, and all of these connections here are 20 inch pounds. So what you do is you pull this out. So you just begin to crank it up. You see that red line? And we're coming up. That's 10, and that's 20 right there. And then you release this, and that snaps in there, okay? 20 inch pounds. Now, the price of these kind of things, they're all over the board. But this one here is it's a middle of the road. It'll get the job done. It has all the connections you need. It has a carrying case, and it's not going to break your pocket. So I highly encourage you to get something like that. Again, this is in my Amazon store. So let's go ahead and work on the connections on these first breakers here, set at 20 pounds. So these first 4 breakers right here, with the gauge of wire that goes into here, is calling for 20 inch pounds. And these 2 right here are calling for 45 inch pounds. So the way we're going to do this, my particular breakers right here have a Phillips head screw right there, so I picked the appropriate head. There's actually 4 different sizes of Phillips, and I went ahead and I picked this one here because that best fits what I have here. And the way you do this is you put the torque screwdriver in there and you back it off first. And then you come back around and you see how I'm holding this, right? I'm holding it like this, not like this. You kind of push in with the bottom of your palm against the back of the screwdriver, and then you come in and you turn until you hear it click, just like that. You see that? Back it off, make the screw loose, come back in and turn until it clicks. We'll go to the next one. We're going to loosen this one and then start to tighten it, holding it correctly from the palm, pushing until it clicks. Operating a new tool like this, it does take a little bit of feel for it. I mean, it's really not that hard. Just get the feel of it. Loosen the nut first, turn it till it clicks, and you're holding it like this, okay? This is a good time to just look at your entire system here. Do you see any signs of arcing, or any wires that are black, or posts that are black? If you want, you can just take and lift this up and pull this out, pull the breaker out, and look at the connection back there. If you see any kind of a blackened area, or I don't know how to say it, but where the power may be arcing there, you can clean that area. Okay, I wanted to show you here. I went ahead and just pulled all these breakers out. The way you do it is you just pull and lift them off these little tabs right here. And I went ahead and took some sandpaper here. This is some 120. And these breakers clamp right onto this bottom one, this bottom lug right here, or this prong. It doesn't go on these 2. I have no breakers over here, and this is what they look like. I mean, that's still not dirty or burnt or corroded, but I like having really good connections. So I went ahead and just took my sandpaper and just kind of got that little surface off of there. And then I came over here on the other side and did this too. And I did all of these, and I just wanted to show you that. They just kind of hang right down here. So to put them back, you just put them on this first lip right here. I'm going to start on this one here. You just set it down in there, and then you press in. You see that? Set it down on that little tab, line up the prong, and push it in. On the inside of the breaker, where it snaps right onto there, you can do the same thing. You can take a piece of sandpaper. I'm using currently right now 80 grit, 120, it doesn't really matter. But you're wanting to just kind of like what I showed you on the power cord, how you keep those prongs nice and shiny. But you can come in and clean in between there too. Now mine, I've already checked mine. Mine are all nice and clean. I don't have to worry. I'm getting good connections. I'm not getting any arcing. I've seen pictures of people's breaker box and some of these connections here, and I'm like, oh my God, look how corroded those are. That thing hasn't been touched in years. In wires like this down here, if they are all dirty or corroded, you can take some Electromotive or Electroclean, spray it on there, take your brass bristle brush and clean that all off in there, wipe it off, and keep those connections clean. And you can see that mine are all nice and clean. Now, one other thing you've seen me do outside, okay, where you have wiring that's in corrosive environments, like under the chassis, where the starter is, and you're leveling jacks and all that type of thing. There, in those outside applications, I will do the same thing. I will take some Electroclean, I'll wire brush them, sand them if I have to, and then afterwards I'll take some battery post protectant, and I'll spray the the protectant on those connections. Some of the most common electrical problems that people run into is it just this is not taking care of them. It's just amazing on some of the things that I have seen. I'm just like, man, you've got to keep these connections clean. If you don't, you're going to get all kinds of unnecessary electrical problems. But in here in the RV, you don't want to be putting any dielectric grease or battery post protectant or anything like that. Not in here. Outside, yes. I'm going to go ahead and finish torquing up all these different wires and the breakers and all of that, and wrap this up. And then we're going to go outside into my electrical bay where my transfer switch is. Okay, we're here at my electrical bay, and this is where my transfer switch is. But before we get into the transfer switch and how to service it, like always, I want to take just a moment to thank all of you who support Joni and I by using our Amazon store. I mean, most of you guys shop on Amazon for all kinds of things anyway, right? But if you use my Amazon store link first to go to Amazon and shop for whatever you want, whether it's RV parts or personal items, a computer, whatever it is, it's a great way to support Joni and I. So many of you will go and click my Amazon store link first, shop on Amazon like you normally would, put items in the cart, and check out. Using my Amazon store is a great way to say thank you, Martin. Thank you for taking the time to doing these videos and helping the RV community. For those of you who are new to my channel, the link to my Amazon store is
down there
in the description text. So thank you so much, all of you. It means so much. All right, let's get back to the transfer switch. Now, your transfer switch may be in a little bit different place than mine is, but this is the transfer switch, and right back here is my hardwired EMS. And coming off of my EMS is this little cable right here that shows me the digital readout and where I'm able to bypass the EMS or not, depending on what I want to do. But just to make this easier, I'm just going to disconnect that cable and tuck it out of the way. Remember, we're unplugged from shore power and the generator is not running, okay? Very important. So on my transfer switch, we have two screws, one up here and one over here to remove this cover. So let's remove the cover. Now this piece of equipment is very important to take care of. It's one of those pieces of equipment that a lot of people just avoid servicing or don't know that they should service it every year. I mean, it's out of sight, it's out of mind, right? But it shouldn't be. In a nutshell, without getting into all the details, when you plug into shore power or run your generator, this box right here, this transfer switch, is responsible for distributing all your 120 volt power into your RV. Not paying attention or ignoring doing PM items on your transfer switch can cause all kinds of unnecessary electrical problems in your RV and sometimes fires. Take a look at these failed transfer switches examples that I've collected over time. I mean, this is why we want to service this baby every year. It's just too important to ignore or put off. I know it's a little cramped in here, but Joni's doing her best in getting me on film. But when you pull the cover off, just like in the RV, okay, when we pull the main breaker panel off, if you turn it around, we have the diagram right here. And it tells you the inch pounds of what these terminals need to be torqued to. Now on first inspection, I'm looking again for any arcing, any blackening of any of these connections, any corrosion. I don't see anything. Everything is looking really good here. There's no chafing on the wires and so on. So we're going to check the lug torque on these lugs right here. So we're going to do these three right here first, and this is calling for 45 inch pounds. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the right fitting for these lugs, and it's that one right there. And now we're going to set the torque screwdriver. Remember how we do that? We pull this out and we're going to turn it to 45 pounds. 45 inch pounds. Then we're going to put in our tip. What's the next thing we're going to do? That's right. We're going to loosen them first. Then we're going to tighten it, holding it like this until it clicks. So we loosen it.
Oh, you need to get in there. Okay.
That actually was pretty loose. And now we're going to tighten it till it clicks. Hear that? That one's good. Let's do the next one. We're going to loosen it. Those were actually loose, Joni. And now we're going to tighten it. The reason it's important here to torque these and not just come in here by hand and say, I think that's about good, is that these wires are coming into aluminum, a casing here with an aluminum screw right here. And if you over tighten it by hand, over time you can gall these up. These threads will gall on this here. So that's why it's really important to torque them to inch pounds correctly. So always check the label and then look at the lugs and look at the gauge of the wiring, and you're going to know exactly, okay, that's got 8 gauge wire, 40 inch pounds, and so on and so on. So they're not all the same, all right? But the label tells you exactly how much inch pounds to torque them to. Now the last time I did this, like I said, I mean, I'm a little late to the race here. It's been, I don't know, 14, 15 months, maybe a little longer, because I do this once a year. All three of those big lugs were actually a little loose. They weren't near as tight as they should be. So again, how did they get loose? Well, driving thousands of miles all year on these bumpy highways and our beautiful highway system that we have, you know, all that shaking and jarring and slam jams that we go over. That's why we're checking this. If that thing backs out and that gets loose and you're pouring in 50 amps or 30 amp or whatever it is into your RV, that looseness can cause arcing, extra heat, and all kinds of things. That's why we're doing this. And this is really not that big of a deal. You know, you take the cover off, you check them, put the cover back on, you're good to go. One other thing I want to point out here, I have brought this up to you before, but I want you to look right back here in the corner. You see this right here? This is a damp rid container. And I keep this in my electrical bay because look at all of that water that it absorbs out of my electrical bay. I like to control the amount of moisture that's in here, because if I got a lot of moisture, what's going to happen? It's going to get into the transfer switch, my EMS, and I've got electrical things back here. I do not want moisture. I mean, Joni and I, and like many of you, you know, we're down in the South a lot. It's humid down here. Florida, the same way. You need to control, and this is the way I do that. I control the moisture with this. when I opened this up to do this video, I looked at this and I said, oh, look at that, Joni. We need to change this. And I just changed this, I don't know, about 4 or 5 months ago, maybe a little bit longer. So, as you know, I carry spares, and this is what you do. I buy them in packs of 3. I carry my extra ones in the wet bay. You just take a screwdriver and remove the cellophane cover on it, and then you remove this little lid, and you tear off the aluminum foil top, put the cover back on, and then I just slide it back up underneath there. That's another way you can Martinize your electrical bay, right there. All right, I'm gonna go ahead and finish tightening up these lugs, putting the cover back on, and then I got some important closing comments. One other thing I wanna talk to you about is the torque wrenches that I carry. I carry a 1/2-inch drive, foot-pound torque wrench, a 3/8 drive, foot-pounds torque wrench, and a 1/4-inch drive, inch-pound torque wrench. And that's in addition to my inch-pound torque screwdriver. One thing I wanted to show you is that, you know, sometimes you need an inch-pound torque wrench for when you're using a socket. Okay, so that's what this is for. And of course, the 3/8 and the 1/2-inch drive, I mean, these rigs have some big bolts on them, so I carry all 3 sizes. But one thing I wanted to show you, anytime you use any kind of torque wrench, whether it's this kind or this kind, when you're done using the torque wrench, I want you to look right here. You pull this out and you back it down. Watch that red line. You unscrew it all the way down to where it's below or right at 0. The same thing with these kind of drivers right here. You loosen the nut on the bottom so that the handle moves freely, and you back it all the way down to 0 or below 0. The reason you want to back that off to 0 or preferably below 0 is it will take the tension off of the spring mechanism that's in here, and it'll always stay calibrated. So whenever you're through using any torque wrench and you're going to put it back into storage in your toolbox, back it off and let it be at the rest position. And by the way, if you're interested, all these torque wrenches are in my Amazon store in the tool category. If you want to learn more about how to take care of your RV, just click my logo right under this video, and that will take you to my YouTube homepage. On my homepage, you'll see the playlist tab. Click that, and every video I've ever done will be right there on that page in different categories. Or, as another option, you see that magnifying glass in the upper right-hand corner? Click inside there and type what you're looking for. If I've done a video on that subject, it will list it. Now, I know fuel costs have been impacting your travel plans out there. I mean, we all live in that same world, right? But don't skimp on maintenance. It's just not worth it. Keep up the good work, be safe, and be kind to one another. So until next time, this is RV Street. Stick around.